What do Putin apologists see that normal people can't, Dan Hodges?
What do Putin... I mean...
Because there are an awful lot of them about.
Yeah, I mean, but, there are an awful lot of them about, but most of them pop up on social media. And
they're the Russian bots, aren't they?
Exactly. And a lot of them are generated from Russia. I mean, I do not... But I think the problem is we obviously have a problem in this country with... We've talked about the problem with Putin Russian propaganda, but we've actually got a bigger problem in this country, in my view, with Trump propaganda. And we've got a situation in this country now where we have a significant number of people across the political spectrum who simply are either buying the Trump MAGA propaganda or are just refusing to stand up to the new Trump narrative. And, I've got a lot of, and I've said it, I've got a lot of respect for what Keir Starmer, for example, has tried to do in this situation. But Keir Starmer's foreign policy is suffering from, in my view, a fundamental misconception, which is Keir Starmer is trying to pretend that nothing has changed. That Donald Trump, at the end of the day, is essentially believes the special relationship is intact, that America still stands behind the West, and that America still is essentially a supporter of Ukraine and an opponent of Putin. And it is quite clear that is no longer the case. What you were saying was absolutely right. The fundamentals of everything that we've rested on for the last, basically in this country since 1945, the great Atlantic Alliance and the United States underpinning NATO and underpinning our security, that has gone. That is over. And in fairness to the Trump administration, they're being completely honest about it. We had Hesketh came over, the American Defense Secretary, saying, you guys are not our priority anymore. And we're still wandering around pretending that this new reality hasn't happened. And we've got to acknowledge it now.
Edward, what do Putin apologists see that normal people can't?
It's tough. I mean, I want to go back on what you were saying there, Dan, about the issue with Prime Minister Keir Starmer. What else can he do? I mean, the thing is, trying to call it out or to say, listen, I don't like your agenda, I don't like what you're doing, that's going to create...
Well, fair enough, but what about the question about Putin apologists? I mean, why is it that so many people in this country, and we get them calling into this programme, it's not just bots on social media, it is actual people who phone into this programme defending Putin and criticising the West. I've never been able to fathom that out. People who seem to loathe their own country.
It's one of those questions which, when I have conversations with friends, they always talk about, bring the Zelensky conversation, they talk about funding, they talk about whether some of my friends have even said, whether this whole war is justified. And the thing is, where do those people get the information from? And, how can they actually respect Putin for what he's done? I think it's down to an ideology where, people think, oh, well, what he's actually doing, it works for Russian people. And that's when you get into this conversation and it takes you down a rabbit hole, and you can never get a definitive answer.
Rachael?
Well, I think we see that Putin just believes he's got the power to walk on anybody's land and to take that, whether that's Georgia, whether it's Macedonia. He can see that pathway and to say, I can take that if I choose. So that is why why we have stood by Zelensky, is to stand up to the bear, to ensure that we are putting the pressure back on Russia to say, actually, there are boundaries on which you cannot cross. And in some ways, Ukraine has been the little man against Goliath over the last 3 years and done incredibly well in standing for those values. But as we move forward from this point, because we can't say today didn't happen, what we need to recognise is where those powers are operating across our world, whether it's China coming into Africa, whether it is the United States now controlling what's happening across North America. We've seen the relationship with Canada already break down. We have got to recognise the reality of where we are at the moment,
Rachel,
and decide how we rebuild a democratic world order and to put those values on a global platform. And that's the work that I believe Keir Starmer has, David Lammy has, and others, to rebuild the institutions of power globally.
You talk about Africa, China and Africa. That's something that is not often discussed, because I think the case there is China influence on certain African countries saying, listen, we can do this for you in terms of infrastructure, transportation and everything. But in actual fact, the deal is, if we kind of not encroach or we help you guys, we want something from it. And to a certain degree, that's kind of meddling in politics or getting involved
in colonial power
more or less
in Africa, aren't they? Luke?
Well, to answer your question, I think trying to put this together, for me, it fits into perspectives. So what is Donald Trump's perspective? In my eyes, he seemed to be very clear that he wants to make America great again, that he doesn't want any wars, that Europe should pull its weight, and he's looking towards China as the potential problem. So that's his perspective. Putin's perspective, and to answer your question about the apologists, I guess the thought process they would have is that they see NATO expansion coming across. The fact that we're able to say this, people are going to war on this very topic. So there's a belief that we need to try and understand why people would apologise for that. So it's not I don't think we can just dismiss it and simply say, oh, well, they've got it wrong, because they feel that there's an answer there. But the way I see us resolving this, America are the world power, whether we like it or not. We have to try and make sure we align what is in our best interest, in Europe and Ukraine's best interest, along with America, and use them to the best of our ability. We're certainly not going to realign to Russia, regardless of what the apologists say.
Can I just quickly say, just very quickly, that's a classic example. To answer the question, why is Putin's propaganda working? We've been having this conversation. If you did lots of programs on this before Donald Trump's election. The line from a Tory MP was very clear. Putin's the aggressor, Putin's the enemy, we have to defeat him. What has happened since Trump's election? We've had this, with the greatest respect, rubbish. From on the one hand, on the other hand, Trump this, Trump... No, I'm sorry, just let me finish.
I was asked for what the perspective of an apologist is. That's very different.
You were asked about why people accept Putin's propaganda, and you answered by giving an answer about Donald Trump's foreign policy.
No, I gave a perspective on both sides, and I think it's understanding
off by talking about Donald Trump. Yeah. And this is the point. This is what's changed. We now have, whereas before it was just we had the Putin apologists, we now have the Trump apologists and people on the right who think they should align themselves with Trump, peddling Putin's propaganda. And that is the fundamental thing that has changed.
OK, well, the final word on this goes to Amma, who says, Iain Dale is the John Bolton equivalent in the UK. War, war, war. That's something I never thought I'd be called, but there we are.